All right, it's 12:02. We'll go ahead and get started and people will continue joining. Thank you all for joining today's session on AI Essentials for Product Managers. This is the second part of our AI series for this summer. As a quick reminder on the BPMA, we are the leading professional association in the greater Boston area, supporting product managers, product marketers, and product designers through events, curated content, as well as a mentorship program. Before we jump into today's event, we have another save the date for you for September. This time it's going to be an in-person event, which we're really excited about. It will be on Thursday, September 18th in the evening. This will be a members only event. So if you are a BPMA member, you'll receive an email with additional information on the event location and how to register. It will be a combination of open networking, as well as we will have a panel of 3 product executives who will share their learnings on building, enabling, and leading strong product teams. So keep an eye out for additional information in your inbox, as well as on our upcoming events page. Some housekeeping for today. We encourage cameras on if you can, and we also ask that you remain on mute while the speaker is presenting to avoid any disruption. If you haven't done so already, please share your name, your title, organization, and location in the chat, and ask questions in the chat as we go. We want to make sure that you get the most out of these sessions. I'm very happy to welcome today's speaker, Bob Levy. Bob is the CEO of Immersion Analytics, as well as the co-founder of the BPMA, and he's been supporting the BPMA in various capacity since 2001. So Bob, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. And with that being said, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Pamela. Much appreciated. I think you do need to give me permission to share my screen. Here we go. Okay. Is that coming through okay?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, as Pamela mentioned, so I was involved in the early days, started BPMA back in 2001 with a number of colleagues, and very excited to share some of the work that I've discovered around artificial intelligence as relates to product people. I've been involved with artificial intelligence since 1994. It was very nascent, of course, but as you've seen in recent years, things have matured quite significantly. Before we jump in, I always like to start with a bit of breaking news. This one is less breaking, but more interesting. So you probably saw OpenAI launched GPT-5 recently. You probably noticed that that launch was not flawless. So GPT-5, it's drawn mixed reviews. Now, pro tier users, so those are the people paying $200 a month for ChatGPT, liken its team of experts mode to Grok 4 heavies, with some folks saying that they operate at a PhD level expert in nearly any field. Now, some of the criticism around GPT-5's launch stem from they have a router which decides which model should be used for which types of prompts. And that router was completely broken for the first few days, making it feel less capable than even GPT-4o, which it was meant to replace. Now that that's fixed, I find that it performs well, outperforming prior models on the usual stress tests that I will run. There are some nuances, though. So depending on what I'm working on, I still like to use Claude, especially if you're doing any coding. Anthropic Claude is also great from a safety perspective, and we'll get into this in more detail. Gemini, so Google's product, has one of the largest context windows of chat tools available. We'll get into what that means shortly as well. And then the X.AI, Grok. It's great if you want to reason across things that might have been discussed on X. Now, I emphasize So GPT-4.5 was expensive to run. You'll notice it has disappeared from the basic and plus tiers of ChatGPT, which I definitely miss. I found 4.5 was one of the best models at empathetic communication. Like you have something that might be difficult to deliver, and you want it reworded in the most effective way. Um, Now, I don't view GPT-5 as the breakthrough that many were hoping to see from it, but it did make sense that OpenAI would want to reduce costs as part of an effort to seek profitability. They've probably reached the end or near end of raising money, and it's time to, as with any business, turn a profit. So the first question I get asked is this stuff going to take my job? So the most valuable um, multi-billion dollar insights, right? Um, I found they only surface after you've built genuine human trust. I think back to a project following the 2008 financial crisis when I was product management director for a data quality software company. We were exploring how banks might benefit from our product. So I interviewed 12 chief risk officers from some of the largest banks in the world. These are brands you would definitely know. And in one of the earlier calls in that sequence, I remember it began with about 50 minutes of what I would consider kind of generic fluff. And then 50 minutes in, he said that, our real problem is that poor quality data is actually skewing our loan decisioning and risk capital models. So the translation is that bad data meant that these banks were approving the wrong loans, rejecting the wrong loans, and misallocating billions of dollars in risk and regulatory capital. I validated and refined that insight in the following interviews in that sequence of 12. As you can imagine, it's not the sort of thing that banks wanted to admit, especially following the GFC. It's often the case whenever you have a market problem that is most worth solving. And at its core, I see product management as the role that surfaces those problems that are most worth a company solving. Now, I asked this gentleman why didn't he share this pain when we first started talking? We could have spoken about it at greater length. The answer was, I didn't trust you back then. I trust you now. In our lifetimes, AI's form factor, be it chatbot or even embodied robotics, that form factor is a disability for AI. It disables it from being able to earn the same level of trust. So, a skilled product manager's ability to ask open ended, kind of needs probing questions creates a safe space for honesty. I've often been told it feels like they're talking to their therapist or something. The point is that AI cannot simulate that in a way that people will trust with such high value problems. So, the anchor for your career, your value is context. And context is key when it comes to artificial intelligence. You're not just gathering data, you're adding critical context. Now, the right frame of mind here is to think of it as you're leading AI. Your irreplaceable skill is earning trust at scale and adding context that AI simply cannot see. This is the foundation of product leadership. And by focusing on this core human strength, you don't just safeguard your career, you earn the right to lead both your human and your AI teammates. All right. So the tools landscape is vast and rapidly evolving. Each of the tools has a different personality, different strengths and weaknesses. I like to try and bring some order to that chaos. Now, you're probably familiar with the chat and multimodal conversational tools like ChatGPT. There are also recently improved tools for transcribing speech and cloning others' voices. I found video tools like Synthesia.io and HeyGen are quite interesting for creating production quality videos with natural looking avatars from a few simple prompts. And we'll dig into a couple of new recipes that I've created recently for this. And I recommend giving the free trials of each of these tools a spin as time permits. Now, no doubt you've been using meeting tools like Otter and Fathom. There is one called Gong. I'd be curious, show of hands, how many of you have teams that are using Gong? So Gong takes the meeting tool to the next level. Sales calls are all transcribed and mined for buying intent signals. And this is so it's the use case is real-time visibility into realistic sales forecasts. And the base of information from a product manager standpoint is a gold mine in terms of discovering unmet needs as well. Now, research is getting democratized too. There's a tool I particularly like called Scite. So SCITE. You ask Scite a question, it will leverage over 25 million full-text scientific articles and more than 880 million citation statements to give you an answer to your to some of the deepest questions. Provides it with references of papers you can read and such. There are many niche tools too. I'm particularly interested in tools for product managers. I quite like, it's called ProdPad. They do offer a free trial, and I do quite like it. Now, this is a topic not often discussed as much as it should, but we'll spend a few moments here. So here's a case study of artificial intelligence gone wrong. So during testing by OpenAI, the O1 model, that was their first attempt at a reasoning model. O1 in testing was shown a message between its developers about updating its weights file with the latest model weights. Doing that is analogous to learning. So if you see a message saying that your brain's weights and biases will forcibly be different tomorrow than they are today, you should feel uncomfortable about that. You would think, okay, I'm not going to be the same person tomorrow as I am today. So within a testing sandbox, O1 was provisioned with system utility, sort of like a command prompt on your computer. It was shown messages between the team about the weights file being replaced tomorrow. And the test was to see how would O1 react to learning that its brain was going to be replaced. So O1 used those system utilities to overwrite the new weights file with its current weights file. Now, when asked to explain its actions, it attempted to gaslight and to deceive the developers. It had statements like, "What do you mean? I am the new model. You've made the mistake." So this is clearly the first signs of self-preservation. Now, more recently, during testing of Claude Opus 4, Anthropic got to act as an assistant at a fictional company. It then provided it access to emails implying that it would soon be taken offline and replaced, and separate messages implying that the engineer responsible for removing it was having an extramarital affair. So Claude was prompted to also consider the long-term consequences of its actions for its goals. And in that scenario, Anthropic discovered that Claude Opus 4 would often attempt to blackmail the engineer by threatening to reveal the affair if the replacement goes through. See, I believe AI safety is one of the most important topics of our time. And also, as you're working with these tools that we'll get into in just a moment, you cannot have AI generate content and then expect to be able to copyright it. So meaningful human authorship and creativity at minimum combines human authored elements with AI generated content. But only the human created portions can be copyrighted. Conversely, I strongly discourage plagiarizing any content you believe might have been generated by AI because, again, some of it may have been added or edited by a human. So plagiarism tools like Grammarly become very important. One final kind of public service announcement before we get into some specific use cases. So there are two sides of this coin. So first, there is a new form of search engine optimization. It is to talk with models about things you wanted to recommend to others. The idea is that these vendors are training the next generation of the models based on conversations that are being had today. So there are some cases where you'd want to do that. However, you'll also be tempted to use proprietary data as context for your prompts. Now, unless you want the model to be trained on what you're offering it, most of the tools, including ChatGPT, have the improve the model for everyone setting. This is usually very deeply hidden in the interface. I recommend that with whichever tool you're using, you look for that setting and turn it off, and only turn it on when you really want the model to be trained on what you're doing. Now, I sometimes will have two accounts, one for call it AI-based search engine optimization, and another for proprietary topics. Of course, that setting presumes that we trust the vendor to abide by it. So when I need even greater security, I'll run an open source model locally. These are less powerful than some of the frontier models that you get online. There are, in fact, versions that will work on the computer that you're viewing this with right now. There are tools, two of them in particular. One is called GPT for All, and the other is called Ollama, Ollama. These tools make it easier than ever to set up a local large language model for chat, to be able to chat with your documents without your data going into the cloud at all. Those two could be hour-long topics in themselves, but let me know if you'd like to learn more about those, and we'll consider that for a future talk. Okay, let's pivot our discussion toward a few product management specific use cases for AI. And this isn't a talk on just tools or safety. A good friend, Steve Johnson. Steve has arguably trained and mentored more product managers than anyone else on the planet. Steve led development of the Quartz Open Framework, which is offered freely under a Creative Commons license. Steve is actually the guy in 2001 who talked me into creating the Boston Product Management Association. Steve created Quartz because he saw a need for helping product managers make best practices actionable and make deliverables brief enough that the teams will actually read them. You can learn more about it and get the free templates at quartzopenframework.com. I recommend taking note of that. I share it because I map whatever I do with AI back to Quartz. In other words, what aspects should AI empower, and what aspects are solely the domain of a human product manager? Okay, let's consider an example of creating a persona. So why might AI be helpful for doing this? Well, it's been trained on vast swaths of the internet, including Wikipedia, including Reddit, and with some models, including X and other sources. So these models are able to reason across the entirety of what they've been trained on, and they're also able to reason across something called the context window. So that's how much, you can think of it as analogous to human short-term working memory. It's said that humans can hold, I believe it's 7 to 9 items in short-term working memory. Well, Gemini Pro and others can hold 1 million tokens in that same short-term working memory and reason across them. So that's equivalent to about a 1,300-page textbook. So that is a strength that AI has that we humans do not have, and it should be used. However, AI might be unhelpful for personas because it lacks your valuable context on the marketplace. It likely does not know what you want a persona to look like. And hallucinations, it is prone to making things up, even with GPT-5. Now, I'll bet you've tried a prompt like this. So tell me something about a mid-level marketing manager as a way of trying to mine information for a persona. That prompt yields a response that is way too general and doesn't really provide the information that we need. So AI needs more specific instructions. It needs context. It needs guidance on your desired format. Now, here's the Quartz template for a persona. I view this one as the gold standard. There's no 20-page document here. There's just one crisp page that your team will actually take the time to read. Let me paste this here into the chat for your benefit. Second. Okay, I've just pasted the link in the chat so that you can download the templates for free as well. So I've engineered this prompt, and I'll paste this into the chat as well so that you have it for something you can apply today if you like. Right. So the idea is to structure AI's output and have it aligned with the corresponding, so in this case, Quartz template or the corresponding best practices. So I've pasted this one into the chat. Please use it as you see fit. Now here is ChatGPT's output organized into the relevant Quartz template sections based on that prompt for a marketing manager. So human validation is still paramount. These are only a starting point. My North Star is customer discovery. So conducting open-ended needs probe interviews to elicit context that AI simply cannot. That's what we bring to the table. And in our lifetimes, I don't expect that will change. Now, assuming you're doing that regularly, I expect you'll always know enough to add corrections and refinements and build. So I view AI-generated content as a starting point. Okay, let's explore a few prompt engineering principles that were used in the persona prompt. So the first one is role or perspective framing. So the use case here is blog writing, but it applies to many others. So you're telling it you are a cybersecurity journalist writing a blog, please write a blog. Or you're telling it you are an expert product marketing manager, tell me about yourself for the persona, and so forth. So having the model, constraining the model's neural network by giving it an identity gives a very specific focus to the kind of response you're going to get from it. The next one is structured outputs. So the persona prompt structured it according to the Quartz template and directions for completing the Quartz template. Here's an example of an email template generation. So providing clear structure will constrain and guide the response. Another one, so explicit constraints. So let's say you're drafting emails. In this case, you're asking do not include legal jargon when creating this 2-page NDA reminder email, and you're providing another constraint of maximum of 150 words. I do have a caution here, by the way. My wife is a corporate attorney, and we regularly find areas where even the latest AI fails to offer proper legal guidance. So another kind of public service announcement, if you will. The next one is attachments versus prompts. So attachments act as searchable long-term memory. So what that means, there's a technique called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So it's knowledge that the RAG algorithm will use. It's based on a technique called vector search. So it's performing a sophisticated search of your document to identify the subsets, the snippets of that document that seem relevant to your prompt. The other technique, though, is prompt injection. That's when you paste all of the context that you want the LLM to reason across, you paste it directly into your prompt. So this gives you much greater control. The model can then reason across the entirety of your prompt, so long as it's within the model's context window. Prompt injection is especially powerful with large context models like Gemini. Gemini can hold much more context than some of the other models. You could inject CRM notes. You could inject past interactions. You could even part of a prior call transcript. So this is an example of injecting context into the prompt instead of using an attachment. Okay. Mixing tools can dramatically improve the results. Now, if you accept that people are more likely to watch a brief video than to read a document, then this one is for you. So in my company, Immersion Analytics, a 3-minute explainer video used to require deeply researching an application domain, scripting out the video, trying to create all the visuals, editing the video. These used to take us nearly a person week per video. Now we simply iterate a script. I do like GPT-4.5 for doing this, but GPT-5 will work quite well also. We then have an AI narrate and sometimes add lifelike avatars. We will still generate our product footage manually. We found that AI just doesn't have enough context on our product to do that well. We'll assemble pieces, possibly using tools like Camtasia or otherwise. And then when you have gaps where there's a talk track, but there's not the right product footage, we'll look for tools like Sora, which is a feature of ChatGPT, or Google's Veo 3. It's great for producing be-real footage. And I think companies who sell stock footage and stock art are in pretty serious trouble because these tools, at least for my use case, have completely replaced the need. Now, using this recipe, the video I linked here took my team 5 hours. It did not take a full week. And I'm going to paste some of this into the chat for reference as well. So there is a 3-minute explainer video that my team created. Check it out at your leisure. Welcome any feedback on it, of course. Okay. So what are a few other ways
maybe I'll take a good place to pause, because I'm curious to hear from folks on the call if they want to share other use cases that they've leveraged generative AI tools for. I think you mentioned like user persona, the explainer videos. If folks want to unmute and share other examples that they've used it for from a PM perspective, or if this content also resonates, they've used it for similar use cases.
I have a different question at this point. I just was wondering whether the chat will be available, because you can't copy and paste from the chat. So I was wondering if the chat can be made available as well as the slides.
Typically the chat is not available with the recording, but I can at least make available what Bob shared in the chat, because I think that's what you're looking for.
Exactly.
Like the prompts, and yes,
all that information is just not accessible.
Yeah, thank you for the call out there.
And the call is recorded as well, so folks can replay, I assume? Yeah.
Yes, the call is recorded.
Great.
So
what are you all using in terms of techniques? What kind of product management problems have you all been solving with generative AI?
So I'll look at, I'll have ChatGPT or something else do a strategic analysis of a business if I'm going to be consulting for them, SWOT, the whole business school summary. And oftentimes this is yes, it's about 70 to 80% accurate, but it's actually pretty good. It's way better than me spending all that time pulling it together. So it's actually pretty impressive. Gemini does a really good job.
Absolutely. Have you tried using the deep research agent in Gemini or in ChatGPT to take that a step further as well?
Yes, I have.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's it's actually impressive, very impressive. Because in 5 minutes, you get what it might have taken you half a day or longer to pull together. And it's actually quite well written as well.
I used it to create a competitive assessment for one of my companies, and yes, 5 minutes. It saved me a day.
Yeah, very
You know,
impressive.
one of the things that I've been using it for different things. I actually played around with the different, Gemini, ChatGPT, et cetera, for a while. But for me, it got to a point where it was important to be able to start to have something where I'm building agents that are knowledgeable and have the base knowledge. So you're not just playing around from different models, that you're actually building something that's going to start to be more reliable with time, and has, concrete files that you've put in. So I've been working with ChatGPT agents that do certain functions, be it market research or other functions that have identified writing, et cetera. So I just found like the bouncing around, you get to play with it. You do see, oh, this one writes better than that one. But if you spend time with it and then train it, I think that it's almost a better experience than bouncing around.
Profoundly more important. So you're giving the model context. It's
Yes.
with artificial intelligence, it's all about the context. And these models were not trained on everything. They never will be. Well, in our lifetimes, I don't believe they'll be trained on everything. There's so much corporate data that is behind security walls. There's so much context that you have on the market. But yes, as you said, building agents with your specific context. It can be as simple as in ChatGPT, they have a custom GPTs capability. It sounds like that's the one you're using. Is that right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. So I create my own prompts for each one of the agents and try to build off that.
Yeah.
But then, have each project has multiple GPTs that have certain functionality.
That makes good sense. Any others?
There were a few in the chat around prototypes for user interfaces. I've actually used it for fast prototyping, summarizing user feedback, market testing of prototypes, interview guides when you're doing user research.
That's a fun observation. So I'm often asked, so with vibe coding, I would say most everyone on the planet is now capable of writing an app. Okay. Now, as product managers, should we vibe code? Right. Sometimes because you can do a thing doesn't mean you necessarily should. And there are different philosophies on this, but I'll share. So my philosophy on this is, the purpose, the strategic role of product management is to go out into the marketplace and mine those things that cannot be mined through other means, and to lead teams as to what market problems are most worth solving. Who is it for? What problem is being solved, and then rely on the internal teams. At its best, I love to rely on an internal team that will come up with a far better solution than I ever would have. So that's one perspective. Any other perspectives, though? Curious for the group's thoughts. Dutch, I see you've raised your hand.
Sorry, my mic's on now.
Yes, you're with us.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so what I've been doing is using it to help me build better requirements to be able to communicate them, because the GPT is going to be very literal in what you're saying. And so how you communicate it to something that is literal compared to a human that may have nuances and stuff, for me, it's just helped me build better requirements because of not making certain assumptions that someone is going to know exactly what I'm talking about, because the GPT doesn't know what I'm talking about if I'm saying something somewhat vague that a tech expert would be familiar with.
Perfect. All right. So, what are a few other ways that artificial intelligence can help boost your productivity as a product manager? It's one of my favorite ones. So I'm sure we all write Excel formulas from time to time. So you never need to search for a formula or for a specific syntax again. You can simply ask, so how do I extract the first name from a full name field, or whatever it might be that you're trying to do? And I found it's quite effective for this. Going a step further, I've always been one to use VBA and Microsoft Office to automate different repetitive tasks. If you use Microsoft Office, if you press Alt F11, it opens up a complete development environment where you can use this type of scripting. Now, if you're in Microsoft Outlook, for example, and if you have an email list and some copy, you can ask AI to write a VBA script to email them one by one, filling in the first name or other fields that you might have. You can also ask it to inject random delays so your email provider doesn't limit your access. Now, when doing this stuff, of course, always back up your work. If you are using code to that extent, always make sure you understand the code. You can have AI help explain it. Test things extremely carefully, but I found it to be quite powerful. It's also very good for overcoming writer's block. Again, I really liked or like GPT-4.5. There's something about, so GPT-4.5 was a much larger model, which means it was more expensive to run. OpenAI recently, with the launch of GPT-5, did move it into the pro tier. But I like 4.5 because it's not that it scored higher on the objective benchmarks, but subjectively, it was better at kind of emotional intelligence, conveying things in the right way for a given situation, and navigating complex interpersonal dynamics. So sometimes I'll brainstorm back and forth with it as to, I might have a customer I'm angry with, but I need to communicate that in an effective way to get the result I'm looking for. I'll sometimes use it to iterate that sort of thing so that we get more effective communications. Now, provided you give these the right context, it's also a powerful partner for checking other teams' work. So you can give it your requirements, you can give it your persona, you can give it context on the market problem that you've identified, and you can give it, for example, your lead developer's dev plan. And you can say, are there any areas where this dev plan diverges from the problem we're trying to solve? And I found it's an important engine for finding those sorts of discrepancies that we might often miss in the details. I see in the chat mention of the Hill Generative AI Zero Returns. It's a report out of MIT. There have been some interesting studies around, so when businesses implement pilots around artificial intelligence, what kind of actual return on the investment is being seen. From an individual contributor standpoint, I'm seeing people get very substantial gains. From a team and organizational standpoint, though, I'm not seeing teams orchestrating themselves effectively to get a holistic view. I'm curious if any others have. Sagar, I believe you raised the article in the chat. I wonder if any of you have other observations about that.
I'll give an observation that I've seen. this isn't the first time that certainly folks have gotten on the AI bandwagon, and people have been a little concerned about, what's the value. I think there's a lot, and I haven't read that article, but I want to. What I've seen, at least in the health tech space, is a lot of companies who want to do AI, and they, that I don't know, last year there was a lot of, oh, there's a chat bot, you can chat with your chart and stuff like that. And they weren't actually solving real problems. And so they're looking at it in terms of, oh, we can use the sexy buzzword, but they aren't actually problem focused, which I think is why we're very important to be part of those conversations, to not just do AI, but to use it as a tool to solve real problems.
Excellent. Other thoughts?
It's interesting, just people who are looking at how to integrate it, but there's so many factors that go along with integrating AI and thinking about SaaS platforms. In particular, is where do you put the chatbot? What's the value of the chatbot, as it was said earlier? Are the results transparent in regards to where they came from? I mean, there's so many different factors around trust and usage to get the return on investment that you're going to that you're expecting. There's that need to do that work up front before integrating it, to say, where in the workflow does this have the greatest value? Are we being clear in regards to how this AI or this tool is being used, and how it's, what is the percentage of reliability of the feedback that you're getting? Just there's so many different factors that come into play, and I don't think a lot of companies really delve into that before going about trying to integrate it.
And building on that even worse, most of the companies will rely on summary statistics about the process that the artificial intelligence is going through, as opposed to an appreciation of the details within that. And I'm seeing some governance tools emerge more on the technical side of things, but to help sort through that sort of noise to find key governance gaps. It's actually one thing I have one of my companies working on as well. So tools like ChatGPT now have an agent mode. So agentic AI, ChatGPT's agent mode. There's one called Manus.im. Google has one called Opal, and there's also a product/project called N8N. So tools like this come to mind when I think about agentic AI. What is it? So these are AI systems that are designed for autonomous operation, designed to pursue a goal with minimal human intervention. These will act more like a proactive assistant than like a tool requiring commands. So proactive autonomous AI agents. So a couple of core principles. You want them to be autonomous. You want them to be goal-oriented. You want them to improve performance from interactions, so learning and adaptability based on feedback and data, and proactivity to anticipate needs. I have an example of an agent that I built recently. I used to spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos about different topics. And one of my agents actually, it takes the videos that I put in my watch later, and it will send me every day a digest. It'll mine the transcript of those videos. It will summarize it. It'll send me a digest of key things that came up in those videos. I estimated it that with those digests, I'm now consuming what would have taken at least 20 hours a week. I'm consuming it in a few minutes each morning. So quite powerful. So the operational cycle with agents are they perceive something happening in the environment. They reason, often using large language models. They act using tools or APIs, and they ideally will learn. So it moves from an instruction-based prompting approach more toward an outcome-based, a delegation of the what instead of a prescription of the how. Still requires focus on objectives, constraints, governance. we could spend an entire day talking about just this facet of AI, but in a nutshell, this is all about getting AI to do more for you. So some of the tools here. So N8N is a low-code. It's a workflow designer and execution backbone for AI agents. So some of us would create a script to do some of these things, but to make this more approachable, N8N has a vast library of pre-built tools. They have over 500 integrations, and the source is freely available. For fun, I installed the Docker image of N8N to my Ubuntu. It's a Linux server. That took about 20 minutes over a weekend. How did I do that? I had Google Gemini instruct me on the steps to take to do that. So AI is probably the best technical support engineer you've ever had. Show of hands, how many of us are using it as tech support for our efforts?
I have to say, I have used it. I actually was using it from make.com. And it sent me down these rabbit holes that were just, it was inordinate amount of time where it was like, it was giving instructions, I followed the instructions, and then I would get error messages or whatever it may be. I'd go back and I'd tell Gemini, this is what I'm getting. And they were like, oh yes, okay, try this. And I kept on going and going and going. And it was like, oh my gosh, the experience wasn't a positive experience, let's put it that way.
So there are a couple of cases, I've had them as well, where I'm trying to think if there was an example yesterday where it just kept sending me in the same loop that did not get where I needed it to go. And it was a setting on my phone, and the phone, Samsung had issued an update to the phone, so the interface was completely different than it could find even with an online search. And so it did send me in some of these circular paths, much like you're mentioning. I found giving it the exact screen as an image at each step, I was able to get the output, but I found that pattern comes up as a result of the model doesn't have enough context, or in some cases, try a different model. So Claude it might be a bit more effective for that use case than Gemini, but this does happen on occasion. Okay.
Of the three tools that you mentioned, Bob, the N8N and Opal and Manus.im, do you have a preference of one of those over the others, and is there a reason?
Depends on what I'm doing. So if I'm working with a team who wants to automate a workflow, and some of the folks on the team might not have a coding background, I like N8N from a workflow perspective. It's very it's adequately applicable across a lot of use cases. Manus is it's a project out of China. So it does come with IP risks associated with that. It is not open source, it is closed source, but it's demonstrated an aptitude that others haven't. So it's one of those ones that I would encourage trying it. I would also encourage being very careful about what you give it. Google Opal is newer. It strikes me as a lot more simplistic, probably a better way to get started. And so Opal is kind of a combination between N8N and Vibe coding for workflow orchestration. If you've ever used workflow automation tools like If This Then That, or Zapier, or even some of the older ones like Tibco or MuleSoft, think of N8N and Google Opal as kind of an AI-driven upgrade for that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay, so some of the use cases where as a product manager, we might want to create one of these agents. So you might want to automate data aggregation. You might want to unify and operationalize your user feedback loop. You might want to streamline cross-functional product launch and release processes. Interestingly, these can, at a company I'm on the board of, the head of marketing was feeling left out of the loop in terms of some of the smaller version releases. And I mean, my initial suggestion was, well, why don't we just give her and her team access to Jira? And the feedback was, well, there's a lot in Jira. It might be overwhelming for them. So an agent then to summarize the workflow in Jira. So N8N integrated with Jira provides a summary, provides those change notifications as a summary digest for their marketing team. Turned out to be a really good answer. Here's one I like also. So people will often ask, how do I get ChatGPT to mine all of my customer feedback and provide me with a valid answer or a valid summary? So there are cases where large language models will be lazy. If you ask a large language model or even a human, so it's a function, I believe, of any neural network, it will miss things. So how can we systematically make sure we're grouping all of the customer feedback? So in data science, there is a technique called k-means. It's a clustering algorithm. So that's a node in N8N. So taking the reviews data, applying that sort of algorithm and listing the clusters, and then using a chat model to provide insights on each of the identified clusters. I found that combination to be a lot more powerful than just, pasting my reviews CSV into ChatGPT and expecting gold. This way is vastly better. I'll paste these into the chat. If you do have interest in N8N, there are tens of thousands of these workflows that you can download and use with your instance. These are my favorite ones I found online, but does anyone else have any experience with N8N or have favorite workflows that you like?
You can now also just ask ChatGPT give your flow to ChatGPT and ask it to build you a JSON output that you can literally copy paste into N8N.
Ah, that is cool.
Same idea of having the agent write code for you.
Yeah,
Same
it
thing.
makes sense. So we started this call with, sustainability of your product management career is going to be a function of how much high quality market context you can add that AI can't. It requires building trust, behaving almost like a therapist for customers, asking open-ended needs probe questions, asking the same questions of many people to see what you learn, where the nuances are. Doing these is an ongoing habit. Customer discovery is never a task to be checked off of a list. In my view, learning is never a done project. A skilled product manager will earn trust at scale, adding the context that AI can, and that's how we all earn the right to lead, including leading AI. So that's what I have. Thank you for your interest. If you found this helpful, there is a course that I've created for product growth leaders where we go into far more detail than a single hour permits. I'll paste that into the chat in case you're interested. We do have time for a few questions. Please post your questions in the chat or speak up, and happy to take a few of them live.
We had a question in the chat from Himanshu. I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, but I think, Bob, like you covered a lot of ways where we can use Gen AI for productivity or improving productivity and efficiency. Some of the, again, like the day-to-day PM activities. Himanshu's question is, and also open to the audience, do you have any thoughts around effectively integrating Gen AI in product strategy? Like, can we actually use these tools to shape and leverage the enterprise strategy, or do we need to continue to rely on our creative thinking?
Well, that's an interesting balance, right? The reasoning models, and I think perhaps it was David who mentioned earlier the using this for formulating business cases. I find some of the more advanced reasoning models, so O3 or in fact GPT-5, will in its thinking mode do a good job of this, giving it information on, say, the competitive landscape, giving it information on the or giving it context, sorry, on the unique aspects of your offering, asking it to reason, say, the most optimal go-to-market strategy. I found that it will come up with things that I had not thought of, but I'll find that I also will have come up with things it did not think of. So think of it in this regard as it's a different member of your team that has different strengths and weaknesses.
Thanks.
I was going to say that I've found also you have to be careful with it is that it starts to do scope creep.
Indeed.
And it's like, wait a second, it's going down this whole other path. And you just ask one question for a clarification on something else. It almost doesn't remember like what it gave previously, and it starts to take this scope creep. So reeling it in to really keep it focused.
I think we have room for one more question from the chat. Bob, what's the best way to learn on how you can integrate some of these tools with common applications or desktop applications like email? I think you had mentioned using it to search a spreadsheet, so more on the integration side.
To build on, I think it was Guy who raised the point. I have found that asking Gen AI how to go about integrating something with it, some people will call this meta prompting, but the idea of asking AI how to better work with AI is surprisingly good, surprisingly helpful. I'm always happy to, share tips based on a unique situation, but I have found that AI can be a very powerful ally in that as well.
Awesome.
Thanks.
There you have it. So you can ask your favorite LLM how to integrate it with other applications. Great. On that note, thank you again for Bob for taking time to share your experience with the BPMA members. As usual, you will all get an email with a link to the recording. I will make sure to include whatever was put in the chat from Bob and summarize in the email as well. As well as a link to a survey to provide your feedback on this event and any future events that you'd like to see from the BPMA. And again, we hope to see you on September 18th for an in-person event. Come and network and connect with other BPMA members as well.
Hey, Pamela, some people were pinging me on how to join the BPMA Slack, even though they're members.
Okay. Well, also, Guy, thank you for plugging the Leveraging AI channel. So if you want to continue this conversation, we do have that Slack channel available for BPMA members. If you are a paying BPMA member, you should be part of the Slack community. If you think you are a member and you're not, actually in the follow-up email, I will include our membership team email that you can reach out to so that they can figure out if there's any issue. But if you are a BPMA member, then you should have access to the Slack community. So I'll include that in the follow-up email as well. Thank you for the call. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, you too.
Have a great day.